Nora, hi.
Hello, hi all.
I
Nice
was
to
wondering
meet
if we were
you.
going to have many people today because on Tuesday we had
Yeah,
loads of people, eh?
yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Where are you right now?
I'm in Boulder, Colorado.
Ah, so what time is it there?
7
7
a.m. Yeah,
6 a.m. here in
yeah.
BC.
Early morning on the West Coast.
It's still dark outside.
In Finland, it's 4 p.m.
4 p.m. Is it dark there as well?
No. And I've been in Zoom the past 8 hours in a workshop so far.
Oh,
I am sorry, eh?
No worries.
It is just incredible, isn't it? Just how much time we spend in Zoom these days.
Yeah, but we save
Yeah.
time. I think we save time. Don't have to travel.
That is true for sure. But are you guys all teaching right now as well?
Yeah.
Not this semester.
You're not teaching, though.
Not this semester, no.
Nora, are you teaching?
Only in April, next April. So
My goodness. So Seth and Peter, you guys are teaching?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm teaching.
Yeah, I'm teaching as well. It's really tough, eh? Like, I don't know what your colleagues have been telling you, but I'm teaching a large first year class right now with 150 undergrads, and it's tough, eh?
Oh, wow.
And mainly it's tough for them. I think that's the really
Yeah.
hard part, you know.
Yeah, you have to make everything digital. So how do you do it with 150 people?
I'm teaching a master's class right now that's only about 20 students. It's really tricky to find ways for them to discuss and interact online because I just don't want them doing these asynchronous forums every week. And so trying to come up with new ideas has been really difficult, ways to engage them and actually get them to think.
Yeah, that's from my experience as well. Yeah. We try to split them into small groups and everything, but nothing happens.
I think as well as the semester goes on and they sort of realize the magnitude of what they're having to deal with, I think that, I think we're going to have a real problem with them getting quite depressed about the whole thing. And I'm starting to see that already. And the same as you, Seth, I really try to shake it up and do synchronous and asynchronous and make it fun and have open mic sessions and all the rest of it. But
right.
It's like Nora, though. It's like they're having to do this 8 hours a day, every day of the week, you know?
I don't know about your schools, but I mean, here in the States, of course, things shut down in the spring. And so Duke was already online. So to some extent, I think they've actually dealt with a little bit of that. And they're sort of resigned to this model now. And the weird thing is we're one of the few universities, it seems, that's actually been able to manage COVID this semester.
Mm-hmm.
So University of North Carolina State, pretty much every other school in the area has shut down. And Duke still has a positive test rate that's under 0.5%. And they've just been really careful about everything they do. And so some of the students are taking classes from home. Some of the students are taking them in person and some are taking them in sort of a hybrid model. So we have 3 sections for this class actually. And it's going as well as I guess it can. I mean, it's not an ideal setup, but you know.
it's demanding for the teachers.
Yeah.
3 times the amount of work, eh?
Right, because you have to do it in so many formats.
Greta, hi, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good, nice to see you, eh?
You too.
Hey, and Albertus, how are you, man? Nice to see you as well.
Yeah. Hi,
And Alia,
John.
how are you?
Hey, yeah, lovely to see, lovely to meet you all.
Yeah, likewise. Hey, so if I have a look at our agenda, I'm thinking we're 2 minutes after 6 right now, so we should probably push on. And if anybody else appears, we'll just sort of include them in the discussion. But what we're going to do is simply just do quick introductions, and then I'll do an introduction to sort of some of the sort of big ticket ideas behind the journal, and then we'll discuss really quickly I know it's going to be hard, like who additional editors might be, because you haven't got a list of who the current editors are. But anyway, to throw out some ideas of people who aren't on the Zoom call about who possibly we might like to include. Then we're going to discuss the first issue, which I think we're already starting to sort of form some ideas around. And then we're going to sort of brainstorm ideas for a possible second issue. If nothing else, then how we might actually go about that. Why don't we start with introductions, and I'm going to work my way from the top left-hand part of my screen to the bottom right-hand part of my screen. So Peter, let's start with you.
Hi, everybody. I am Peter Chem. Currently, I'm a professor of geography at Central Connecticut State University. We are in Connecticut, very close to Hartford, the capital. I teach resource environmental geography. I'm originally a product of Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. My area is with participatory mapping, PGIS, but actually in the, I handle more with the conflict management, managing conflicts in PGIS applications. And as you all know, I'm now teaching from home online. So that is it. Currently, I'm writing a book on participatory GIS and participatory mapping, their applications in conflict management. So hopefully by the time I finish, by December, I'll send copies around.
Oh, congratulations! So you got the book proposal approved, eh?
Yeah, got approved. Thanks.
Excellent.
Good. Yeah. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vera.
Hello, my name is Vera Hosner. I'm a professor in sustainability science at the Arctic University of Norway. So I'm working a lot with environmental issues and climate change adaptations and such things. And I have been using both PPGIS and PGIS relating to indigenous people in the Arctic. And we are also working with digital storytelling now at Svalbard. So yes, I've been using different kinds of tools.
Excellent. Thank you, Vera. Nora.
Hi, Nora Fagerholm from the University of Turku. I'm a geographer. I'm an adjunct professor in participatory landscape research. Currently in a research position mainly. I'm academic research fellow, and I've worked with participatory mapping approaches since 2005, and both in Global South, particularly in Tanzania, in the context of rural people and communities' values on land and forest, and then in European context, in rural multifunctional landscapes, and currently and in national parks and so on. And currently I have a project related to urban green infrastructure and also linking PPGIS approaches to 3D visualizations of landscape.
Cool. Thank you, Nora. Nice to have you here. Seth.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So my name is Seth Sikorbody, and I am actually finishing up my doctorate. You've caught me on the day itself. I'm turning it in today, which is kind of wild.
Congratulations.
So I'm really excited that I'm almost done. Yeah, thanks. So I've got 2 more weeks and then I defend. So I'm a PhD candidate at Duke University, and I've been here for the last 5 years. And I came from DC and from the federal government, from working for the Fisheries Service and World Wildlife Fund. And my research really focuses on large-scale conservation efforts, and I'm interested in how we design and implement conservation interventions. So I think a lot about sort of biodiversity preservation and trying to improve conservation outcomes. I do a lot of work on international environmental agreements as well. And my dissertation is focused actually on Antarctic protected areas and does efforts to establish new MPAs in the Southern Ocean. So in terms of participatory mapping, I use it primarily to try and understand how it is that we integrate different types of social and economic and political factors into spatial prioritizations. So this idea of collecting data and thinking about what it represents and how we translate it and some of those factors that haven't traditionally been integrated into MarkSan or GIS. So that's really my focus. Anyways, happy to be here and looking forward to working with y'all.
Likewise, Seth. Nice to have you here. Britta.
Hi, my name is Britta. I'm at University of Utrecht in the the Copernicus Institute for Sustainable Development, and I am in the Environmental Sciences group right now. I'm currently finishing up a book with the United Nations and a team of others. We're mapping the Sustainable Development Goals with the UN, and through that process, I'm finding a lot of ways in which we could incorporate participatory mapping into collecting that indicator data. So that's kind of where I want to go in the future. I'm really excited to be here because a number of you, like Peter, I've cited your work for years, and it's so exciting to see your face.
Thank you.
John, thanks for pulling together this rockstar group, and it's really an honor to be here with each one of you.
It's an honor to have you here as well, Britta. I'm sorry you couldn't have seen the list on Tuesday as well. We had a sort of who's who of participation mapping around the world. It's a really exciting group of people. So yeah, nice to have you here.
Really cool.
Albertus, I don't know if I should call you Albertus or if you, I know you have another name which you go by. And
Hi, everybody. Good morning for you all, but evening in my time. I'm Albertus Pramono from Indonesia, but you can call me Monty.
That's it, yeah.
Much easier. Yeah, I've been working on participatory mapping mostly as researchers, but also in the last few years working also as a practitioner, working on consultancy works mostly. I have a degree from University of Hawaii at Manoa, so it's a nice place in the middle of the ocean.
Wow.
And I'm currently, a consultant for the World Bank, mostly on tenure issues. I'm working mostly with indigenous peoples in Indonesia on kind of the tenure aspects, and also on community planning kind of stuff. So yeah, I've been also on the board of ISPM, not very active one, but at least, and so happy to be here to, so that we have a kind of a journal that we, about to start, working on it. Nice to have, to meeting you all, everyone.
And nice to have you here, Monty. Thanks very much. Alia.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Alia Ryan. I'm based in the UK. I've been working with Indigenous communities, mainly in Latin America, since for about 20 years, since I was a student of anthropology, working with them on sort of participatory local land defense schemes, whether it's land titling or stopping illegal mining or oil exploitation, things like that. I'm now, since about 4 years ago, I'm working for the US-based nonprofit called Digital Democracy, and we're accompanying various communities, mainly still in Latin America, who are doing both community mapping and monitoring projects. And as part of that, we're developing some tools that support greater community autonomy in the mapping process. Those tools are called Map.io, so kind of that's mainly where my work is based at the moment, but my interest is in all the tools and methodologies that support community participation and autonomy.
Excellent, thank you, Alia. And I have a feeling that Rudo has just started to work with you as well. Rudo Kemper, who's also on this editorial board, right?
Yeah, today, his first day.
Really, good choice, eh? Ryan.
Hi, my name is Ryan Tui. I work for the U.S. Geological Survey. I'm about a 50% research position with them, and I've been with them for about 6 years now. But I started my participatory mapping career, I guess, in the early 2000s with my dissertation, I was working down in the tropics in Costa Rica and working with coffee farmers and ecosystem services. I'm a hydrologist by training, married a social scientist, and got into participatory mapping through there. And since then, we had been up in Alaska for the past 11 years. And during that time, I worked with a lot of Alaskan Native communities and First Nation communities, doing some participatory mapping on contaminated water sites, and then also trying to kind of digitize some of the indigenous knowledge onto the landscape. So, you know, and that research is kind of focused around environmental change, but it also has some kind of infrastructure and water quality related research. So very excited to be here and great to meet you all, and thank you.
Super to have you here, Ryan. Thank you. Shala.
Hey, John. Sorry, I have my 1-year-old this morning, so you're probably going to see him, and I look the part. So I'm just going to keep my video
right.
off.
Love is love, and that's all good.
My name is Charlotte Burnett. I'm a PhD student at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, in a degree in global governance and human security. My background is actually in conflict resolution, and I focus on refugee and migrant rights. And I was working in refugee camps in West Africa and the Middle East for a few years before starting my PhD. And I stumbled across participatory mapping when I was working in Palestine, because there's a lot of issues with spatial data there, and we were constantly trying to create updated maps, hand maps for everyone to be able to know where to go and to not stumble upon an incursion. And so then I fell in love with it, and I've focused the last 5 years of studying how we monitor and evaluate perceptions of the participatory process for conflict resolution. I currently run my own consultancy firm called Organizing Together here in my home state of Michigan. I am also the co-founder of the ISPM network and the current secretary. So I will be here in a supportive role as I transition from that committee to this committee next year as my tenure is over. It's very nice to meet you all. It's so great to put a face. I'm sorry I don't have mine, but it's lovely meeting you.
Nice to have you here as well, Charlotte. Charlotte's actually been sort of instrumental to getting things rolling here. So just to recognize her for that. So my name is John Corbett. I am also a geographer, like many of you here. My background is participatory mapping. Actually, I've been doing participatory mapping ever since I did my honors thesis as an undergraduate student some 5 years ago. Well, probably actually closer to about 35 years ago. And then just a whole series of serendipitous things took place. My master's was also using participatory mapping. My PhD was using participatory mapping, my postdoc. So I started to get into whether we could sort of transpose some of the sort of ideals of participatory mapping into Google, the Google API platform, back when Google first released its API. And then sort of subsequently have sort of been drawn into this whole sort of world of software design, for good or for bad. And so we do a lot of participatory mapping with primarily First Nations communities, but we also work with a whole series of other sort of marginal communities, mainly in Canada. So we work with people, homeless population. We work with people with intellectual disabilities. Looking to see how maps can obviously sort of create a sort of a different understanding or present a different understanding about the relationship to place. So like so many of you guys here on the call already. And then that's sort of like the one side, the high tech side of the work I do. But then also I've just started a low tech side, working actually together with Britta and Logan, which is actually looking at the sort of historical impacts of participatory mapping over the last 25 years. So we're going to revisit some of these sort of seminal projects that we find ourselves citing in the papers we write or the reports that we produce, and examining in this sort of retrospective way how impactful those projects actually were. So sort of this sort of balance between the sort of, my work is really based around the balance of this sort of really high tech end of stuff around spatial data management and presentation, or using geospatial web type technologies. And then the other side is actually the sort of historical reflective piece. And I suppose that's the joy of being an academic, really, isn't it? As you get to pick and choose the things that interest you. Let's move on then. What I'm going to do, I think, for this second agenda item, which is, are there any additional editors that we might invite? So I'm just going to throw this to the floor. And I understand that we don't have all of us on here because we had to split the this initial sort of workshop into two different sections. And to be perfectly honest, I'm really glad that we did, because there were so many people on the Tuesday meeting that it was actually sort of somewhat chaotic. By the time we were done introductions, we only had about 20 minutes left to discuss the other aspects. So is there anyone who you think that we should specially have on this editorial committee? And thinking that from the perspective that it's great to have people who are recognized within the field, but also because they bring expertise, but they also obviously bring profile, or they sort of they bring sort of ideas to it. Nora?
Yeah, I actually don't know who are currently involved. Do you have a list of
okay, so if you go into
people?
the chat, if you go into the chat on the right hand side, the second one down, there's the docs.google spreadsheet.
Okay.
If you click on that, and to be honest, it
Sorry,
doesn't
I
even
didn't
matter.
see
You
it.
don't necessarily even have to look at that and just think, hey, I think so and so should be on it. And if they're on it, I'll tell you, hey, they're already on it. And if not, then we'll add their name to sort of a list of people who we should actually approach as well.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could bring in some more people on the marine side. I think maybe there's not too many who work with the ocean and coastal issues on the board.
Okay.
Maybe someone from who's been working with the Kimberley coastline, maybe Cobrin or Munro.
It's perfect you suggest that. I just put 2 links in there of people that do more marine mapping.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant, excellent.
Yeah, so I don't know if any of you know Ariel Levine. My question about her is I'm actually not sure if she does a ton of participatory mapping anymore, but she's written a few really good papers that have been linked to culturally sensitive areas, is sort of what other people have turned it. I've seen in Hawaii, as they've designed some state marine protected areas there. She's at San Diego State in California. And the other person is Kira Gee, who I just saw gave a really great presentation on some work, doing similar work and sort of building a framework for including culturally sensitive areas in marine spatial planning. And she's in Germany somewhere, so I don't know her though. But I've been meaning to reach out to her. She seems brilliant. So.
Brilliant. Okay, that's really good advice.
And Ariel Levine's fantastic. I can vouch for her. She's really great.
And Vera, do you have anyone in particular that comes to mind?
Yeah, I was thinking about those working with the Kimberley coastline. Cobrin is one of the last names there.
Is that Western Australia?
Yeah, in Australia.
Right. Okay. Well, leave that with me, and I'll check that out. Eh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then you also have Van Riper. I think she done something. She did something in California.
Who was that?
Van Riper. She's a psychologist. I don't know if you.
Can you put her name into the chat?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can.
Monty, I was thinking maybe that Renee Lewis might be someone. Renee Pulau Lewis. What do you think? Because I was suddenly thinking we don't really have that much Indigenous representation, eh?
Yes, I think she's very strong in Indigenous cartography, and I wrote 2 papers with her, and also with Jay Johnson.
Right.
So I think she's kind of will bring a very good contribution with that, and then issues. She's strong with indigenous place names and indigenous cartography. So I think it's a really interesting to have her, on board. So yeah, so kind of have kind of more variety of issues that we can bring into the journal. Yes, I think it's a good candidate.
Yeah, I was going to suggest Renee as well.
This in Hilo, I think now. I've been kind of a bit lost contact of it.
Right. Okay. I'll track it down. That's not a problem with me.
How about Sara Ramirez Gomez?
Oh yeah, good one. Excellent. Where is she now?
Actually, I don't know. She defended from the Netherlands a year ago, approximately, and
Right.
was searching for opportunities after that, but I don't know.
Right. Okay, I'll definitely reach out to her. Okay, we've got Helena Coburn at Murdoch. Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, Vera. Peter, any ideas? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I think I found a lot of their names I knew on the list. So these names are fairly new to me. So I don't have it on there yet.
Right. I hope there's some you recognize on there, though.
A lot of them in the previous meeting when I came late.
Right. I mean, I think in some ways, I think the strategy should be, to spread the embrace as wide as possible, because obviously the more folk that we have actually on the editorial board, then the less work that we'll have to do as individuals without being too mercenary about it, because of course it means that, we can spread the load of reviewing documents so much wider. But then, like I said as well, I mean, I think there's also, there's a huge legitimacy thing here as well, where if we have the right names in our list on our editorial board, then we create an enormous sort of groundswell of legitimacy. And as we all know, from the number of emails that I get every day about, would you like to contribute to such and such a journal? I think it's becoming more and more important that we really do sort of, present the sort of the widest and most recognizable corpus of folk actually engaged in the issue. I think, though, that there is a slight issue here, and it was one that Rudo Kemper, who's on the editorial board, raised, which is that we have an awful lot of academics, but perhaps we have fewer, fewer community practitioners. And it's nice to see a couple of you actually on this call today. But I wonder, do any of us actually have any community practitioners, NGOs, representatives that we could actually reach out to too?
One possible problem there, I mean, it was a question I was thinking about, is to do with language, because if the working language of the group's going to be English, that will exclude quite a lot of people. But there's certainly other English-speaking practitioners.
But Alia, in fact, we actually have quite a few Spanish speakers as well, but they were all on the Tuesday, on the Tuesday one. And we could just maybe direct all the Spanish ones to you as well, right?
Yeah, probably one of the practitioners is Dave Deveral, if you remember the name, John.
Who's that?
From Pavit, the Philippines.
Who's that?
I'll type on.
Yeah, write her name. Oh, Dave, of course. Yeah, no, for sure. You know what? I don't know. I was having a chat with Giacomo Varambaldi about that the other day, and I'm not sure that Dave's actually doing this any longer, eh?
The last time I met, he's still working on participatory mapping, but I'm not. I don't know.
Okay, I will definitely reach out to him as well then, for sure. Okay, I realized that, to my error as well, I didn't actually introduce you to the sort of ideas behind the journal. So this is something actually that Vera and I crafted together, which was, what exactly is the journal going to look like? And we considered that there would be sort of two aspects to it. One would be a very sort of traditional academic approach, where we have sort of cited papers and it would be peer reviewed, and the other would actually be sort of community contributions around case studies, around sort of interesting outcomes, you know, with a completely different review process where we would actually draw on other community members to work with those communities so that they could then share their materials. And so it would really be this sort of interesting collective, because of course, again, I mean, I think that really what we wanted to try and achieve with the journal is the sort of creation of a community of practice. And for that community of practice to not just simply be one sort of small subgroup, but in fact to encompass, you know, people working in PPGIS right the way through to, you know, people who are working with sticks and stones, you know, on the ground, and for us all to sort of come together collectively as some form of sort of like, you know, participatory map makers. And so in the same way that, you know, we were interested in a range of technologies, we're also interested in a range of contributors as well. And so we want it to be open access. So we reduce, you know, the barriers to actually contributing in the first place, which of course then opens another whole can of worms around, well, you know, how are we actually going to manage the workflow? Is this something that, you know, is going to fall on the shoulders of the managing, you know, editor, or are we actually going to reach out and try and, you know, get a small amount of funding so that perhaps we can afford to actually hire somebody to, you know, handle the workflow, because it is quite a lot of work, you know, responding to potential authors and dealing with papers as they come in and all the rest of it. And so, you know, that's really what we hope to do with the journal. It might be sort of highly aspirational, but there's a couple of models out there which are really potentially interesting to follow. One was the Journal of Community Informatics. I don't know if you've come across that. Sadly, it's closed down now. It was a sort of beloved child of this guy called Michael Gernstein, who was really big in sort of community and IT. And the other is this this open access journal called ACME, which is a geography journal, which I'm sure many of you have heard about, and I know Monty, you've published in, and I've published in, a few others. So there's a couple of these journals out there which have been really, really successful, that have essentially, you know, punched way above their weight. They haven't had to work directly with large publishing houses, but they've been really successful in achieving their mandate. And to be honest, speaking with people in both of those journals, which is what I've been doing, it's all contingent on having an active editorial board. And so that's, again, another reason why I think we need to have as broad a sort of an editorial board as possible, because, you know, because then sort of collectively we can sort of push forward on this. Vera, did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so I can see that there's a whole sort of selection of new names coming in there, and I really appreciate that. Charlotte, is it relatively straightforward to save the chat stream?
I'm copying and pasting it back into the Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, brilliant, excellent, you're a star, appreciate that. Okay, so now let's go on to our third agenda point. So discuss the first issue. So we thought that perhaps one of the things that we would do in the first issue is to sort of embrace, well, first of all, what we want to do is we want to have a piece which actually recognizes Greg Brown. So Greg Brown was actually one of the original founders of the International Society of Participatory Mapping, and obviously I think he still remains the most highly cited PPGIS academic out there, and he was also a lovely guy. And so what we want to do is to have some sort of, you know, memorial to him at the beginning of the journal. But then what we wanted to do as well, we wanted to think about, well, how are we going to get as much traffic to you know, like to a new journal as possible. And so what we were thinking of doing was to reaching out to maybe 10 to 15 of the sort of, you know, the most recognizable names within participatory mapping, and basically invite them to produce a short op-ed piece, 4 to 5 pages long, not very long. So we're not going to ask them to produce an entire, you know, journal article, and ask them or get them to answer the question, what is participatory mapping? So superficially, this appears like it's you know, like almost a sort of a naive thing to do. But the logic behind it is that I think that there's a number of different sort of fractures within the work that we do. I think that, you know, for a number of people, participatory mapping is viewed simply as a sort of research process, a methodology. Whereas what I'm trying to do is to frame it more as a sort of as a field or as a sort of disciplinary area. So that's one thing, to bring people together and to recognize sort of the overlaps. And then the second thing is to actually create something which people will cite. So right now, you know, when people are thinking about, well, you know, who do I cite around what participatory mapping is, you know, in sort of the initial sort of, you know, whatever background section of the papers they're writing, I think that this could become a wonderful, I think this could be become a sort of a wonderful reference resource for people, you know, into the future, to basically cite one of the papers that most suits their particular, most sort of suits their particular sort of approach to participatory mapping. So I think as well, it would land with a bit of a bang. What do you think, guys?
I think that's a really great idea, and it made me think that, like, in addition to getting these, like, you know, top people that you were mentioning kind of write their take on what participatory mapping is, like, could there be a kind of other side to that where we get people who, you know, the people who are kind of the participants, as it were, the people who have been doing the projects, and they could also respond to that same question, like, what has it meant for us?
That's such a cool idea. Could that be the second issue? Because I really like that idea. I just, my only concern is I just didn't know how on earth we would actually bring it into reality. Because the thing is, it would require, in some ways, it would require the people that are writing the initial papers to then reach out to their collaborators and ask them to then produce. Yeah. And just as an extra sort of compounding level of separation, but it's a brilliant idea, like a really good idea. Darn.
Sorry, go ahead.
When you get very high overlap in what people perceive as
that was exactly what Mike McCall said.
Yeah.
What if you get like 15 people all writing the same thing?
Well, what if, I mean, we can organize that from the start. I mean, what if we invite those people to a meeting and we say, what are your initial ideas? You can either do it in a meeting format, and ask them to come prepared with a couple, like a paragraph about 2 or 3 different ideas, and you could block them out. So instead of trying to have 15 papers, you could have, okay, well, we have 3 different people who are interested in this and 3 different people who are interested in that topic. And you could, to some extent, pair people together. And if you're trying to build a community of practice, maybe they've worked together, maybe they haven't. And that could be difficult, but if people are on board with it and they sign up to do it in the first place, I don't know, I'm kind of curious whether that would work.
That's a cool idea for sure.
I mean, you could end up pairing people that wouldn't otherwise be working together. You could have a practitioner and an academic. You could have so you would have these really strange combinations of people. But I was going to say, I do really like this idea for the first issue, because it will drive a lot of traffic if that's what you're looking for. I mean, you're going to get a lot of citations of these papers. I think that for a lot of younger students, maybe, or people who are new in the field, or practitioners who are looking for methods, they ask that question frequently. What is participatory mapping? I mean, these are the sorts of papers that people read for their preliminary exams, or they read for other things, and are really helpful in terms of defining the field, and they help define the scope of what the journal is looking for. That can be, to some extent, what you build your mission statement off of. We have these 8 papers, 10 papers that cover the full breadth of participatory mapping, and your submission should fit within those silos or cross them in some way.
I really like that idea, Seth. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, like, we could probably, you know, brainstorm it, you know, off the top of our heads right now, even, you know, like we could do one on PPGIS, and we could do one on conflict mapping, and we could do one on, you know, I mean, like, you know, it's not a highly complex thing to do. But I love the idea about having a pre-meeting and bringing people together. I think that that's a super idea as well.
Well, we could do it as a survey as well. I mean, I've still got access to Qualtrics. I'm happy to work with a couple of people to send out a short thing, and we get that list to start with. We say, okay, we have 30 sub areas, let's say, I don't know, however many there might be, and we start binning them. And maybe that's when you say, okay, well, who are the people that we would potentially want to write this article? You invite them and say, can you give us your initial thoughts on how you might define participatory mapping focused around
in this particular context?
Yeah, I think the other approach could be co-authors, like 2 or 3 people that you know can help with the definition. They can write one paper on the definition of participatory mapping. I think that's what we did after we organized the PGIS conference in Kenya. Myself, Giacomo, Mike McCall, and others, we just looked at people who will be good in this aspect, and we told them, write this. And as you said, I've realized that a lot of people quote those 3 papers we wrote, they quoted a lot for the definitions. So this should be very, very, very good. But you are yourself in the field, you know, you have an idea about people and their specialties. The definition is very, very important, critical for future students. So you should be able to put together 3, 2, 4 or 5 people, let them write the article. And with internet, they can send it around and come out with what they think it should be, rather than asking individuals to do it. There will be overlapping, but if they all come out to particularly that definition paper should be co-authors, I think that will be good.
Good.
Yeah,
and so, sorry, go on, Monty.
Yeah, to have a survey of the state of the art is really important, because I think to set the tone for the journal, and also to so far I've apart from what that guy again Mick Chapin wrote a couple in 2006, I think, right? The ethnocartography, indigenous cartography. Probably that's the last survey on this area. So and also he's limiting, the article on only on indigenous people's issues, but what we are talking about is not that. It's more, much broader than that. And for the authors, I think now I saw articles that be co-authored by 50 people. So why not, if we probably can have together and the whole editorial board write something like that. So to set the tone for the for the journal. That's my idea. So that's the thing about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely liking this idea. And of course, the editorial board, you're right, Monty, is a super place to start.
I could comment on something that suggested that we could also bring in the perspectives from practice as well, not only academics, defining PGIS, PPGIS, and so on. And this is actually what we tried to do in this conference, Let the People Map 2019, where the program was kind of built around the academic and the practice side of this story. And we tried to bring them together. Actually, now it comes to my mind that it might be useful to check the conference program, which can be still found on the website, to spot some more potential names.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. And then also that somewhat answers Alia's initial idea about, you know, bringing practitioners together with academics as well. And so, yeah, maybe that's becoming more and more of a potential reality. I mean, the only sort of slight issue that I have, and it's a more sort of a conceptual issue, is that often the language that we use as academics is not the same as the language which is used by community practitioners. Even terms like, you know, PPGIS or, you know, all these other sorts of things. I know certainly with a number of the communities I work with, they're meaningless terms. You know, they're just simply, hey, we use this tool, you know, that involves maps and the internet type thing. And so I think we would definitely have to walk with caution on that one. But you know, there are enough practitioners as well which really have got a grasp of the types of language that are used in academia. So I think, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the ideas of the first meeting on Tuesday together with the ideas that we've discussed today. And I'll put that into an email that I will send around to you for your sort of initial ideas. And then Seth, I mean, if you and I wanted to work on this, I would hugely appreciate it. You know, to sort of reach out and start to think about, you know, about the actual process of how we would go about this. And then obviously, you know, to flip them then back to the editorial board for, you know, for sort of quote unquote approval. But I really like the approach, and it totally makes sense to me for sure.
Well, two quick things. One I was going to say is there was a so Chris Raymond was actually the lead on this, but there was an issue of potentially conservation biology. I can look for you on the idea of conservation opportunity in 2014 that did something similar. So they focused on this theoretical concept, and Chris Raymond was the one who wrote the intro on it. And so that I like I can't remember if it was it Albertus who mentioned the idea of a sort of introductory piece to the whole issue that sort of frames it,
totally,
that the whole board signs on to, and then you have all these individual pieces that come after that. So that's something I can find that article or series and send it to you, John. But yeah, I'm happy to work with you on trying to put together a quick survey. And that could be something that we even just send out to all of these board members, and everybody writes down the 5-10 things that they think qualify as participatory mapping. And then we can look at that, sort of bin it and revise it a bit. And
reach out to folk to actually work together on those papers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, I love that idea. It totally makes sense to me. Brilliant.
Yeah, Chris is actually my good colleague and nowadays based in Finland at the University of Helsinki. And me and Marketta Kytte and Chris kind of form a core here in Finland, and we communicate with each other quite actively. And actually, I know that Chris has also been considering this invitation to the board, but he's been absolutely too busy now with PPBS topics and so on. But I think it might be good to ask again or send another email.
Sure. We will do that. And actually, Marketta said the same thing on Tuesday as well. So we'll reach out to him for sure. Great. Okay, well, the final point was brainstorming ideas for a second issue. But I'm thinking that maybe we should probably park that one for now, because the first issue is really going to take up a lot of our energy. But at the same time, I think we could end up with a really interesting product at the end of it. And then obviously, you know, I think that being an open access journal, you know, we're not really looking at probably any more than 2 issues maximum a year anyway. So I think, you know, given the amount of effort it's probably going to take to get this first issue going, that maybe we should just park that second issue ideas for second issue right now.
So that was one of my questions. I was wondering, like, is there like a target timeline for publication, or is this first one we're just going to like wait and see how long it all takes to get together?
I mean, targets probably are a good idea, eh? But also, I mean, you know, sort of targets around these sorts of things sort of notoriously slip as well. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Alia? I mean, you work in a different sort of realm to academia. What do you think a set of sort of realistic targets around time should be?
I don't know. I guess if like a possible ambition is 2 a year, then. But what I don't have any insight into really is the process of, you know, because I'm not in academia, of kind of submitting articles and then the review process which needs to happen. So I mean, I'd say from having an idea to like approaching people and getting something from them, maybe that would take, I don't know, like 4 months, but then there could be like another 4 or 5 months of process. But
Yeah,
I'm not sure about that part.
Yeah, a lot of it's about timing as well. You know, certainly with the review process, there's times of year when some people are busier than other times, and so often sort of it works in this sort of incredible wave-like system where you don't get any requests to review any articles for like months and months, and then suddenly you'll get like 6 of them all in what, like, you know, 1 week. Because I think, you know, publishers recognize that, you know, academics have more time when they're not teaching, and so they'll try and sort of time that so that, you know, you're still sort of relatively, you know, you haven't been gardening for 2 weeks, and, you know, but at the same time, you know, you're still, you know, you still have time to be able to invest into the review process. So I think that that's probably realistic. I think maybe, you know, Seth, you and I can get together and also, you know, invite anyone else is also welcome to be a part of this process. We get together maybe next week if you have time, and then we'll map out some ideas and then get a form together and send it out. Qualtrics or Google Form or whatever, you know, whatever's easier. It doesn't need to be complicated, eh?
Yep.
And so, you know, yeah, maybe 4 months is realistic to try and get the papers back in. And then probably looking at least at a 2-month review process. We need to build out some pretty sort of strong marketing around it.
I think if we can even have a list of areas and we can have the people for them identified and invited and agreed to by December at this point, we're doing well. I mean, that's, you know, even when we finally have, we get ideas that people coalesce around to some extent, and we send out those invites, those will take a couple weeks to hear back from. And then those people are going to have to sit down and talk and sort of propose what they want to do for their article. And then we're going to have to look at those. I don't know how many articles we've even decided yet, but I'm just throwing out 8 to 10 articles to make sure that there's not too much overlap between them. So there has to be sort of an internal board review from a few people to make sure that that's going to work. So they don't even start writing until January. And then I'd say you have to give them until end of March, April, and then we have to review. And so I would think maybe next July.
Right. Yeah, so basically, you know, we're looking at nearly a whole year to get this issue out, but only because of the complexity of it.
Well, we also have to, I mean, figure out how these systems work and find a publisher. I mean, I don't know how any of that works. That's the other behind the scenes stuff that a group of us are going to have to take on.
Yeah, no, totally.
Then there's a question that does every issue come out as one, like when all manuscripts are ready for publication, or will they be online right away? The authors are, of course, interested in this option, that their text, once accepted, will be accessible right away. And then this would allow the building up, and when the issue is fully there online, then to make it more public and publicize it and share.
They're all super important questions. And there's still this sort of, like, I was talking with Renee Sieber about this, and she said, oh, you know, why on earth are you just not going with like Taylor and Francis and get them to just do it all for you? But of course, then we have this issue that either, you know, we have to pass off like a $3,000 bill to make it open access to the, you know, to the author, or we have to charge people to access the material. And so, you know, which is a real problem in this, particularly in this sort of field, because we want to make our material as accessible and open as possible, right? Which I suppose
the idea.
What's that?
Very antithetical to the idea of participatory mapping, right? If people can't access what you've done.
Absolutely. But at the same time, you know, it's great because you basically say, hey, we've got this idea for a new journal. It's going to work like this. And Taylor and Francis will be, yoo-hoo, let's go. But the reality is that, you know, we would be, you know, signing a pact with the devil, really.
Well, I think that's why the first one might take a little longer, because maybe not for later issues, but at least the first one has to drop as a single volume. They have to all come out together.
Yeah. And Nora, to answer your question, and to be immediately available, you know, for download, and for us, you know, as the editorial board, to also really push all of our networks to make sure that, you know, people have access to the papers immediately downloadable from a single click in an email message, and you know, with as few barriers to it as possible. You know, and with building as much marketing around it as we possibly can.
I can continue. Another idea that I have in mind is that making impact with research and like through written outputs is always limited in these times where we are increasingly busy and click and have like 2 seconds and time to do to understand something. So I don't know if we would like to think about other ways next to the written outputs, like story maps or short videos or something that we could promote next to these written manuscripts.
Or podcasts.
Podcast, something like PowerPoint slides where you speak on it. Yeah. Increasingly, scientific journals at least have started to use these approaches. And one simple thing is this graphical abstract, which is basically just a figure that tells the story.
Excellent. I like those ideas for sure. Initially, when we were putting the ideas together, we really wanted to reach out and have sort of like, you know, non-traditional ways of sharing information through the journal. And so that would totally make sense, like, you know, video pieces, or, I mean, we've been doing a big piece in this Institute for Community-Engaged Research that I'm the director of, around novel mechanisms for information exchange, and podcasting is the thing which students keep coming back to as the thing which is most effective for them, because they just download it on their phones and they listen to it on the bus, and, you know, they don't have to stare at anything, and they can be very, you know, if it's done well, you know, podcasts can be extremely sort of conversational and engaging, and yeah, it might be something we might consider as well. Seth, I see you've unmuted yourself. Ryan, you've unmuted yourself as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, we just had or I was involved in a project with podcasts, and I love all the ideas that you're just talking about, Nora. I think those are really great and ways to kind of, especially with the community practice. And then I was also going to say there's another, we a couple of years ago kind of prototyped a database where all the articles had like a geocode or a footprint. And if we are going to be thinking about these kind of like multimedia and things, I think that's a really neat way for, especially for a lot of the communities I work with, you know, they may not know the best science keyword to put into a database, but they can sure draw a circle around their community and see what's been done there. So again, maybe that's a pie in the sky idea for right now, but I think it'd be an interesting way to try to search the journal at some point.
That's a super idea. Build the journal around a map.
Oh yeah.
Hey, I see Vera's got to go, and I think maybe we should wrap up here, but I just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this editorial board. Thank you so much for your ideas, and we will definitely try and continue to sort of push this forward. So anyone else got any closing ideas, thoughts, comments?
Thanks for taking the lead on this.
My pleasure, sir. It really is my pleasure. It's been really good fun. Like, nice people for sure. I mean, I'm totally, you know, like, again on Tuesday, we had such fun talking together. It was really good. So it's super nice to have this board together.
Did you say that there were going to be regular meetings? It'd be nice to meet everybody else. It'd be nice if they sort of rotate a bit.
Yeah, we should put some thought into that. I think, yeah, I mean, regular meetings would be good, but I'm probably not too regular as well. So maybe if we aim for like maybe a December when we could present back on the results of the survey, that could be a time to maybe try and get us all together. Problem is that there's too many of us to be able to have in one meeting and do anything meaningful. You know, I would say that there was probably twice this number. How we said, like, there were at least 20 people on the last one, and it was, you know, yeah, it was hard to actually get to sort of substantial discussion. Whereas today, I feel like, whoa, we've achieved so much. Like, we've got some really clear ideas coming out of this meeting. Vera, bye.
Do you think might it be possible to have some kind of like shared, I don't know, we use Slack a lot at work. I don't know if anyone else uses that as a kind of place where, you know, we can have conversations if we have ideas or if there's news.
I went and dropped in the free membership for the ISPM network. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mighty Networks, but they create a branded social networking / online learning management system. So you can go on there, create a profile, and engage each other. Usually you pay for your membership and then the dues are given back to low-income communities who would like access to technology or training. But we decided to give everyone here a free membership for a year, and inside that network is a committee space specifically for the journal where you can post updates or give feedback, schedule events. There's a lot of different opportunities there. So I really suggest if you check the chat, go ahead and make yourself a profile and check out the network, and we can keep in touch that way. It's quite similar to Slack. It does have an instant messaging and group messaging system within it.
Thank you.
Charlotte, does it download onto your phone? I mean, is it also an app? I mean, do we get notifications?
Yep, it's an app on your phone.
Gotcha.
Or web accessible as well. Hey, Nora, thanks for that. Hey, you know, actually, I've already set up a website using exactly the same software as well, using that OJS software. It's super good. I appreciate that. Although it's a little bit complicated to use. I'm trying to work my way through it. And actually, I come across Fenio a couple of times recently, so that's good to see. Cool. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off as well because actually I have another meeting coming up. Nice to see you all. Britta, you and I probably should end up chatting in the next week or so. I'll send an email to you. But thanks for your help, everyone. And Seth, I'll send you an email. We'll try and meet in the next week as well. Bye. Lovely to see you. Alia, thanks. Monty, lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Nora, thank you as well. Cheers, guys.
Bye.